another minute before opening up our meeting today. Thank you guys for being on time.
No, it wasn't at last meetings, but I did see the update to the Ruth Pasawa fountain, which was exciting. And then the presentation that Judy did too. That's really cool. So there's two really cool and new and exciting. Well, the Ruth Pasawa fountain's not new, but every time we get an update and some progress on it, it's exciting.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. We're a few minutes in, so hopefully Jeff and Nathan will join us while we have our conversation going. So great. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the October 4th, 2021 Art in Public Places meeting. I would like to call this meeting into order. At this time, I'd like to do a little housekeeping before we start the meeting. Just a friendly reminder to committee members and attendees to keep your audio on mute unless you are speaking. And that is during our staff presentations, and so not to talk over each other. All right, moving on. Next, pursuant to the Government Code Section 54953E and the recommendation of the Health Officer of Sonoma County, the Art in Public Places Committee will be participating in this meeting via Zoom webinar. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Our recording secretary, will you please walk us through how the public will be able to participate in today's meeting?
Members of the public wishing to speak during item 3, public comment, or during our public hearing items will be able to do so by utilizing the raised hand feature or pressing *9 on their phone. Then they will be given the ability to address the committee. Thank you.
Great. Wonderful. Moving on to item 2, roll call. Will our recording secretary please take roll call?
Chair Kiefer,
Here.
Vice Chair Jones-Carter.
Here.
Note that Member Azarian is not currently on the call. Member Baumgartner.
Here.
Please are noting that Member Nathanson is not yet on the call, and Member Fuentes.
Here.
Thank you.
Great. Item 3 is public comments. This is the time when any person may address matters not listed on this agenda, but are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction. The public may comment on agenda items when the item is called. If you wish to make a comment, please raise your hand. If you are dialing on telephone, please dial *9. At this time, each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Eileen, do we have any public comments?
We have no public comment at this time.
All right, moving along, we will go to item 4, our approval of minutes. Today, we are reviewing 2 meeting minutes for approval. We've got minutes from the June 7th and the August 2nd, 2021 meetings. You all have copies of the meetings. Are there any changes or corrections that you would like to bring up at this time? Seeing none, I would like to ask the committee, would someone like to make a motion to approve the agendas as written?
I can make it a motion to approve the June 7th, 2021 minutes. I cannot do the August 2nd because I was not there, but I will make a motion to approve the June 7th.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Can I get a second for the June 7th meeting
That was
minutes?
quick.
Great. Can I get a second motion for the August 2nd meeting minutes?
I think go ahead and get a vote on that first motion,
Oh.
just for simplicity.
All right, we are voting on approving the June 7th meeting minutes. All those in favor, raise your hand. Great, thank you. The meetings are accepted and received by unanimous vote. Now moving on to the August 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes. Can I get a committee member to make a motion on this?
So moved.
Great, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Anne. All right, we are now looking at the August 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes. All members in agreement to accept the minutes, please raise your hand. Great, thank you. Eileen, please note that the meetings are accepted and received as voted.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to scheduled item number 5.1. We have the 5th Street Parking Garage Public Art Project. At this time, staff will present the recommended artist as identified by the project selection panel. The presentation will include background and information on project development, goals, timeline, budget, the selection process, selection criteria, and the community engagement associated with this project. The selection panel is recommending the artist along with specific feedback about the design. At this time, I'll hand the meeting over to David for a presentation.
Thank you, Chair Kiefer. For those in the audience that I don't know, my name is David Ward. I'm the Public Art Project Manager for the 5th Street Parking Garage Public Art Project that I will be presenting to you today. Why don't we go to the next slide, please. So a little bit about the background and the site. This public art opportunity is for an artist or artist team to design and execute a site-specific public art piece for the southwest exterior wall facing Orchard Street and 5th Street of the 5th Street parking garage in downtown Santa Rosa at 735 5th Street, Santa Rosa. The 5th Street garage serves the northeast section of downtown Santa Rosa. The garage has 5 floors dedicated to parking and contains a total of 708 vehicle spaces. The quote canvas for this project is to be contained within the exterior wall space with an approximate maximum dimension of 901 square feet, of which 670 square feet is concrete surface and 231 square feet is open to the parking on each floor. 2D materials such as painted murals or other flat applications were encouraged. However, 3D materials, including light-based installations, were considered with proper engineering and mounting installation. The public artwork should consider the existing landscape and hardscape and lighting and viewers' perspective. Next slide, please. The development of the project and the goals. The goal of this completed project is to draw positive attention and to increase the visibility of the 5th Street Garage, which even regular visitors to the downtown often do not know exists. The art will distinguish the garage from nearby structures, serve as wayfinding element through identification, and distinguish the garage from, and draw people to the site. The artwork will improve the aesthetics of the garage as seen from the street and by pedestrians. The parking division and public art program work together to secure funding for this project and create these identified goals. Next slide. The project budget was a total of $25,000 of approved budget. $20,000 of the budget was for the selected artist, which was the all-inclusive design and construction. Balance of approved budget for city costs such as honorariums, marketing and outreach, community engagement, site prep, and contingency was also included. The source of funding is the Public Art Fund, which was $10,000, which is 1% of the construction from private development paid as in lieu fees required to meet the city's public art in private development ordinance. This source of funding can only be used for public art. The other funding source for this was the parking division, which was a total of $15,000. Next slide. Looking at the timeline, this project started in January of this year. And we had our first deadline for artists to submit their qualifications on March 15th. Through the rest of March and into the beginning of April, we had the selection process, part one, where we identified 3 finalists and they were notified. We had an on-site project orientation on April 14th for the finalists. On May 26th, that was the deadline for finalists to submit their proposals, which they were given additional criteria for their RFP. May 30th through August 31st, we ran the public display of these artwork proposals and we did a public engagement survey. From August to September 13th was selection process round 2 out of the 3 finalist proposals. And then that brings us to today, October 4th, which we will hopefully be, the selection panel recommendation to the Art and Public Places Committee will be made and hopefully approved. And then looking forward, October to November, we will, if approved today, we will finalize the artist services agreement with the selected artist, and we will solidify a final design. And then hopefully by February of 2022, the artwork will be installed and complete. Next slide, please. A little bit about the request for qualifications. The eligibility for this project was open only to applicants in Northern California. Out of the 38 applications, almost half of them were from Sonoma County and about a quarter of them were from Santa Rosa. Other submissions came from places like Auburn, Truckee, Danville, Emeryville, Oakland, Concord, just to name a few. And then we used Submittable for the project as an online portal for submissions, which really helped streamline the application process and the review process. Next slide. A little bit about our community engagement. The primary community engagement component for this project was incorporated with the finalist proposals, which was inviting the public to view and provide feedback about how each proposal addressed the outlined project goals through a survey. The survey was conducted online via SurveyMonkey. Additionally, posts about the project status and updates were posted in social media and on the city's website. There was also a Press Democrat article, and then also using the City Connections newsletter. Next slide. Our selection process. The selection panel that was compiled for this project consisted of 2 members from the Art and Public Places Committee, 2 arts professionals, and 2 members from stakeholder groups, which were from the Downtown Action Organization and from the Parking Division. The panelists that served on the selection panel were Kristen Kiefer, architecture planner and APPC member, Jennifer Bethke, professor of art history at Sonoma State University, Chris Denny, who's the founder and president of The Engine is Red, Pauline Block, marketing and development coordinator with the Cornerstone Properties, and Baumgardner, artist and arts education and APPC member. And then finally, Kim Nadeau, parking division manager with the City of Santa Rosa. Next slide, please. So the selection criteria for the artist qualifications looked at artistic excellence, originality and innovation as evidenced by representations of past work, appropriateness of the artist's medium and style for the project, experience with projects of a similar scope and scale, or comparable professional experience to handle the requirements of working in the public sector. And then finally, availability to participate in the design, approval, and implementation of the project and complete installation by the deadline. Next slide, please. Which brings us to our 3 selected finalists. Our first finalist was L Street Art from Sebastopol, California, proposing their proposals entitled Bouquet. Next slide. From Oakland, California, Matthew Floriani proposing an original work called Dragon Dance. Next slide. And then finally, from Santa Rosa, California, Rough Edge Collective, which is MJ Linda Lawyer and Joshua Lawyer, and their proposal is entitled Help Each Other Grow. Next slide. A little bit about the public engagement survey. The public engagement survey ran for about 3 months and received plenty of feedback. The goal and the intent of the survey was to provide information to the public about the submitted proposals, the selection process, and the overall project's mission and goals. After closing the survey, the public feedback was provided to panelists to consider while scoring finalist proposals. Next slide. A little bit about the public engagement results. The survey was hosted online via SurveyMonkey, asking the public to rate which proposals addressed goals of the project best through multiple choice questions, and also had an optional 6th question where survey respondents could provide comment about their favorite proposal. Next slide. And then the selection criteria for the proposals was looking at appropriateness of the artist's proposed medium, style, and project concepts, demonstrated understanding and incorporation of the stated goals of the project. Proposed artwork was to be suitable for permanent outdoor placement and address durability, maintenance, and public safety concerns. Proposed artwork was to address an effective balance of size and scope of design and choice of materials to ensure that the finished installation is of sufficient prominence to capture the positive attention of the public. And finally was to consider the survey results. Next slide. Which this brings us to the recommended artist, which is the Rough Edge Collective, which is MJ Linda Lawyer and Joshua Lawyer, and their original work entitled Help Each Other Grow. A little bit about them. Rough Edge Collective is a Santa Rosa-based married team, couple MJ and Joshua. The selection panel chose this team for various reasons, including their connection to an investment in Santa Rosa as local residents. They're also emerging artists that are young and expanding their portfolio and their prior quality of work in and around the Bay Area and beyond, and vibrant content and designs that represent approachable and accessible themes to the community. And I also want to just read a little bit about their artist statement, which they included in their proposal, which is, to quote, "Help Each Other Grow was inspired by the young tree parked in front of the wall designated for the 5th Street parking garage mural. Imagining the tree growing over time, we wanted to create a design that could play off of that future growth. This created the vision to use the tree interacting with the main figure on the wall who is providing the tree with sunlight and water. The design is a positive message where the tree metaphorically represents a second figure and how small, well-intentioned actions can create immense growth. In addition to the narrative, we wanted to focus on a color palette that will both draw attention to the wall and create a sense of calming. While designing the mural, we wanted to pair a highly rendered figure with a graphic and somewhat abstract background. The contrast between the two artistic styles will draw attention, first through its bright colors and graphic patterns, drawing people closer to the mural to then take a look into the details of the highly rendered figure. We wrap the design around the pillars to utilize the surface and space, making the mural visible from multiple directions and angles." The selection panel has provided some feedback that, if approved, the artist team should consider in their final design, including the following: First is that the artist should consider activating the negative space on the upper third of the project canvas around the sun. The artist should also consider strengthening the color palette to bring background elements to life. And then finally, they recommended the artist should consider lightening the color palette in the bottom corner of the design near the stairwell for concerns of vandalism. Next slide, please. And then this is just a couple of snapshots of the past works that they submitted in their RFQ. And this is, the couple is growing as a presence here in the Bay Area and has done murals or exhibited work both individually and together across the Bay Area in Oregon, Florida, New York, Colorado, and also has done work here in Santa Rosa as well. Next slide. The project timeline and next steps. So again, to reiterate, today is October 4th. We're looking, today we're presenting the recommendation to approve Rough Edge Collective's design as for the Fifth Street project. The next steps, if approved today, would be through the rest of the month of October and into November, we'd finalize the artist services agreement with them if approved. And then by February of next year, we would have the artwork installed and completed. So the project would be complete. Next slide. And then to reiterate, the recommendation is to approve the recommended artists for the Fifth Street Parking Garage Public Art Project. The final design feedback from the selection panel should be considered upon approval, as I mentioned prior. Next slide. And unless there are any questions, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, David, for that very informative and colorful presentation today. I want to next move to committee members and see if there are any questions for staff at this time. Member Puentes.
Yes, I would like to hear from you, Kristen and Anne. I love this design, but I just want to hear what made you choose this design out of the three panelists, and what was the issue with the other two, if you had any, or just give me your personal opinions and how you came up with this.
Sure. Tara, at this time, is this something that we can discuss during the questions to staff part, or does this need to be part of our committee discussion after we make a motion?
Yeah, this is technically the time for committee members to ask staff clarifying questions. And then once there's a motion on the table, there can be a little bit more open back and forth discussion. So if we could try to answer any questions at this point, David or I, then I think it would be great to revisit Lisa's question.
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. I just wanted to clarify.
No, that's perfect.
Can I have a question?
Anne, please.
Can I ask a question of the staff? Did you present this feedback to the artists already? And did they have a response, or is this going to be coming to them after this meeting?
No, this was not, the feedback from the selection panel was not, we did not let the artists know yet. We're waiting for a recommendation.
Super, that's helpful. Thank you.
Approval of the recommendation.
Yeah.
Great. Do we have any other clarifying questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask our recording secretary, do we have any public comments on this item?
We have no raised hands at this time, nor do we have any voicemails or emails for this item.
Okay, and in order to move forward with a committee discussion, I would ask one of our committee members to make a motion. And this motion can be a little flexible, but we need to have a motion on the table before we have a discussion as a committee. So, Melanie, you're on mute.
So the motion is to approve this artist, or the motion is to, so once the motion is made and is approved, that's it? That's
No,
what
so the motion, the order of operations here that the committee is following is that the recommended motion is usually made. Unless a
Mhm.
committee member wants to make an alternate motion than what's recommended on the agenda. And then there's a second, and then there's an open to discussion. So there's no vote taken on the motion until there's a discussion.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
Jeff, do you have a comment or?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I move that the Art and Public Places Committee approve the selection panel's recommendation for the 5th Street parking garage project.
Great. Can I get a second on this?
I'll second.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. And now we can move to committee discussion. And I would be happy to describe a little bit of the results that we got from the community survey and then our committees or our selection panel process. There were 3 artists proposals that we were evaluating, and there was serious consideration given to the public input and the results from the survey. Our team also felt that it was good information to understand who was responding to our survey as we went forward with our discussions. At least in my experience, we had some very heartfelt and hard discussions about which piece we actually thought would work best in that space to achieve the goals of the project. Some of the bright colors that were put forward in the Dragon Dance, that light pink lilac was really thought to activate the space well and draw attention to it. Really, at the end of the day, the committee was a little concerned about this, the selection panel wasn't as impressed with the artwork that was put forward by L Street Art with the focus on a bouquet or a still life here. And I was happy to see that there was focus on a human experience and relation to a community with the Rough Edge Collective's piece. And so it did go back and forth quite a bit in terms of how our selection panel wanted to approach our recommendation, and really thinking about what achieved the goals of this project. And also there was quite a bit of subjective thought as well of what we thought worked well in that space, but wanting to tie it back again to the goals of the project. And did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I would just add that we did also look at how the artists were engaged in the specific space. L Street Art is a really highly regarded artist, and it was really intriguing to think about working with someone that was doing that kind of worldwide work and had the portfolio that she has and placing it in our city. And yet we felt she was engaging the side of the building, which was really covered with the redwood tree. So that was disappointing, because really, when you look at what's defined as a space, and David had a slide about that, the majority of her artwork is well out of that space. And that's a great idea. And I think the public responded, of course, to that amazing bouquet, but that was going to really be unavailable for most people to see. Even if trees were pruned, those are large trees. And it's inside, it's not the facade, the front facade. So that was a big thing with that. And very disappointing to not, because people submit what they submit, and then you're dealing with what is there in front of you. And we talked a bit about a cultural appropriation with the dragon, and that was concerning. Not going at the motive of it, but the reality of it in this place and this time. Because we really did love Matthew's work, and his portfolio was really exciting, and how he engages space around Oakland and large buildings, and he really has a way with space. And again, that became a stumbling place we couldn't go. So sometimes you just end up narrowing down through things you can't deal with. Does that make sense? And I want to say also, we did love the collective, the two of their work, and the motivation behind that too, with some specific artistic direction. We were giving some strong feedback with those three. Very carefully worded. We don't want to tramp all over them, but we just felt it needed to elevate a bit on the sort of aesthetic realm. Do you agree with that, Kirsten? Is that?
Absolutely. And in terms of the comments also, just, yeah, focusing on there being very dark colors at the base of the garage, and wrapping around to the corner that goes underneath the set of stairs that was potentially concerning for that color palette there. So we did want to provide some comments. It wasn't just a let's go forward with this as it is. It was kind of a does this committee or does this panel have opportunity to influence the design a little bit as we go forward? Yeah. So, but yeah, there was quite a bit of conversation about social or cultural appropriation that I didn't expect would necessarily come up until I thought about the dragon statue that is on the Prince Memorial Greenway, and understanding how there was vandalism of that piece, and how it's a sensitive topic when you're finalizing what type of piece should go in a public sphere. And our committee thought, or our panelists were very conscious of that.
Is the figure that's depicted Native American in the mural?
That wasn't specifically stated or noted. It was to be representative of our community of color. And I don't think that at least in my mind, I didn't identify a specific population group with that. So
it looks that way. So that's my only concern. I would hate to offend someone.
I was wondering the same. But then regarding all the other questions I had, previously, it's obviously you did really, this was well thought out on why you chose this over the other two. And you made some really good points, both you and Anne. And I definitely appreciate that. But going back to Melanie's question, that was something I was questioning too, but yeah.
If it is intended to be a Native American person, I'd rather that's clear, not just, I don't want it to be like, oh, this is a bad representation of a Native American person, or is this just supposed to be a generic person? I can't tell. And that's where where I am looking at this, is that I just don't want it to be perceived as someone doing a bad attempt at a Native American person. But it may be.
I can chime in here and just say that I think as staff, David and I can, when we talk to the artists about the other design considerations, if this is approved, obviously, that's something that we can clarify, and we can identify a way to address any kind of identification that needs to take place through a plaque that'll be on the site. So, I think first finding out what their intention was there would be a starting point, because I do not recall anything clearly described in their proposal about the identity of the person. So that can definitely be clarified and addressed through the final design process.
Can I see the slide just one more time, David, sure, if you could?
Yeah, is that something you can pull up again, Eileen, for us? Eileen, are you able to put up the presentation again?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I'm pulling it up right now.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry for the delay.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I just, either it is or it isn't. So, and if it is going to be, it just needs to be clearer, but not so ambiguous.
Yeah, I think Melanie brings up a really good point, and it would be good to know if the artists intended this to be culturally ambiguous, or if they perhaps used a model who was Native American, or of whatever background. I was involved with working with an individual who considered himself to be generically ethnic because he was mixed race, which was really interesting. A lot of artists like to use him as a model or for photography because you could kind of read him in any direction. But he even admitted that he thought it was a little bit of a cop out, and that people weren't actually addressing the issues of race and ethnicity in the community in a straightforward way. It might be really useful, perhaps not during this meeting, but to talk about what this committee's views might be, and what our role is in making determinations for public artworks and the relationship they have to cultural appropriation, as well as figures who might represent specific racial or ethnic identities. Melanie, you brought up a really important question. I appreciate it.
Nice question. Can I say something? I when I'm looking back on how we got to meet each of the artists, we Zoomed with them, and my understanding was that MJ and Joshua were both of Latin Hispanic descent. And I just assumed in meeting them early on that this was a person that they had just chosen out of their own cultural background, but we did not talk to them about that, nor did they write about it, specifically this figure. So I think that would be really interesting to hear more.
Yeah, I agree with Anne. That wasn't part of our selection panel conversation or interview with our artist team.
Mm-hmm.
I found it to be very interesting and worthwhile to hear from them about the design and the composition. But we did not get into the intent behind the model.
The only other thing that I can add is I know that on MJ's website and through her past work, I've seen her refer to one of the themes in her work is portraying multicultural women in her work. So I don't think it's a stretch to go to that next step and say we would like to know kind of the intention of the identity, the cultural identity of the figure in this mural, and how best to identify or make that clear to the public viewing it. I think that we can clearly work on that with them.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question about the selection process.
Mhm.
I'm just kind of curious, I guess, about the overall pool of applicants, what the proposals, what kind of range you were looking at, and if there's anything about the selection of the 3 finalists that might be helpful to us in understanding how you arrived at this recommendation. So I guess that's to Kristen or Anne.
Yeah.
Since you were there.
Yeah, sure. I'll start. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So the selection panel was very intentional about considering artists and reviewing artists that were representative of the Bay Area. And our final 3 were 2 local to Sonoma County and 1 artist in Oakland. That also had influence when we were looking at the budget, and not to say that kind of swayed our hand, but it was something that we were wanting to be very conscious of. And in our evaluation of the survey responses of who was actually participating in the survey, we did find that a number of respondents to the survey were outside of our community, and we wrestled with that topic as well. Who should be really who are the voices that have the most weight and salience in this kind of conversation? And it was very important, at least for me, to think about an emerging artist who is a local representative from our community.
Jeff, what I feel like I'm hearing you ask is just the bigger question, though, like how'd we get to the 3 from what we had to coming in on the front end? And we had like almost 30 some people. Was it, David? Is it like 35 or
38? Yeah.
Yeah, 38, like a ton. I mean, that felt like a lot of people that really met the basic criteria for putting a budget in and all the slides and yada, yada, you know, just like you could really look at them. And some immediately fell away with just not having the experience of working on something this big and working with a boom or working with just kind of questionable whether they could even really do this work, or not having the language around being able to even talk about something on this scale. Whereas there was a fair amount of people that we all scored, and some people that maybe like I really like wasn't even on the finals 8 because no one else voted for them. So that sort of stratified it pretty quickly. I don't even understand exactly how statistics work. I mean, math-wise, I'm not a mathematician type person, but all to say is like some people I would have liked to seen in there were not even in the final discussion because no one else had them on their top 8. So it was interesting. These 3, there was actually 4 or 5 that actually did make it up to the top part. It seemed like that we all talked about. And we did some negotiating. We talked, I mean, there was one person we actually pulled back up because by score alone, they didn't make it, but we all agreed that was a person we wanted to see a little bit more from. So that was encouraging that we were not just going by numbers. We were really talking about it. Different people had different perspectives on it, but Elle was by far she knocked in the most votes. I mean, like everyone was like, whoa, this person should at least be in the top something. And that was my memory at least. But as for the other ones, we were kind of negotiating around and talking about it. And I think it did come to listening to each other, what others felt were really important in the history of it. And does that help at all? Yeah.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, the 38 who applied with, you know, their examples of past work, their references, but no proposals. So there was no review of additional proposals. The selection panel only received 3 from those finalists that were identified.
Right.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So the next steps that we're looking at accomplishing today is getting a consensus or a vote from this committee, and then working with staff as they make the negotiations with the artist in the next steps if this artist team is approved at our meeting this afternoon.
Right, so there's a motion on the table to approve the recommended artist. And there was a second. So if it's still open to have more discussion if there's any more discussion to be had. Otherwise, Kristen, you can call for a vote on that motion. Or if anyone wants to make a friendly amendment to that motion or propose an alternate motion, those are the choices here.
Just I guess a point of order or clarification, since I made the motion. Should the motion include the name of the artist collective, just for the record?
That would be fine to add that. The recommended language is just to approve the recommended artist as was presented to you today. So I think for our records, that's fine. But if you'd like to reword it, that's okay too. And if you'd like to add anything regarding the notes from the selection panel or the additional notes discussed today, that can be incorporated into the final design conversation that staff will be having with the artists, that those are all allowable actions for you to take as the motion maker or another committee member.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anything to add or revise the motion other than have it state that that we accept the recommendation of the selection committee for this specific project. I'm already blanking on their names.
It's Rough Edge Collective.
Rough Edge Collective. Yes. Thank you.
I still have, am I muted? No, I'm not. I still have, so help me understand this. So the process would be moving forward. If we approve this artist, then staff would take the concerns or questions that we have raised to the artist, but this artist is selected. So
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. Sorry.
Nate, do you have a comment?
Yeah, my feeling is that since this is a city-funded project, it represents the way that a polity seeks to be seen and to represent itself. And to the extent that there's a gesture towards addressing the harms of settler colonialism, or seeking to shift a culture's or Santa Rosa's relationship with the land that it sits on and the people whose land that belongs to, is, those gestures need to be very explicit in the way that, Siqueiros or Orozco or, like kind of mid-century Mexican muralists are very explicit about the political content of that gesture and what it means in relation to the space that it occupies. And I think you run into problems when things are vague. That's my feeling.
That's an interesting point, Nathan. This is a public artwork, and it's in a very prominent location. So it's not as though it's a painting that's exhibited in a private home or even in a gallery that has public access, or is in a location that if you did perhaps see this in a gallery, it might be very easy to put some information on the wall that you would be able to read about what the artist's intent is, or whatever information is deemed pertinent by the curator or whoever assembles the exhibition that you might see it in. But this is a public artwork, so if it's going to prompt public response, then I agree with that. If there is something that is specifically cultural, then it should be specific. And if it's the artist's intent that it was designed to be open-ended or invite interpretation, then is there a way to contextualize that for the viewer?
So I'm all about, promoting diversity in Santa Rosa. So I don't want to be a knucklehead here, but I just feel like I can't support it until we figure, personally me, just until we figure out more about the intent of the artist. I mean, that's just my personal viewpoint. So
my understanding is, because I've seen this person's art before, and she does use a lot of, she does represent a lot of women of color in a lot of her art. And because my question also was she portraying, an Indigenous person, Indigenous to this area, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure it's Southern Pomo, which would be that area. And if so, would that be something that would be noted on there? And if not, give an explanation for that. And this is the project that was chosen. And I know there's some other questions too that we have for that project that haven't been, that haven't been asked from that artist yet, which are going to be asked. But if basically, so we are approving once we do vote, and if we do approve, those are questions that can be attached, or we can amend the approval, the motion with that there's clarification on the representation of this mural.
but we don't get that information. So, I mean, it's done.
Well, we can get that information. The problem, and we could ask and request that information. That the problem is if we do not approve it right now, then we have to wait a whole another month before anything else is done. And then if they do clarify it, and it's something that it's simply clarified, then we still have that extra month that we have to wait. I don't know. This is something probably that Tara needs to clarify. But yes, definitely, I'm also questioning, what you had a question, and what we're all a few of us are questioning on this.
So I think I can clarify that there's a couple options here. I think that I hear the question that's being asked and the concern surrounding that question, and the committee wanting to know the answer to that before a decision is made. It sounds like that's kind of where some of the members are at. So, the vote can be taken on the motion, and that can be, not in favor. It cannot pass. And then the direction to staff could be to work with the artists and bring back the answers that the committee is asking. We could hopefully do that within a 2-week time frame instead of waiting a whole month. We could call a special meeting for mid-October. If that is, we could try to make that happen at least. And then essentially be presenting the project again for approval, but with the additional information that the committee has requested. So if that is kind of the direction that it feels like some of you are wanting to go, then that is an option, but the motion is still on the table, so a vote does have to be taken on that original motion. If that original motion passes today, then we would still be doing what we're talking about. David and I would still be working on addressing this issue. We can report back to the committee, but the committee would not necessarily take any other action. The committee would be approving the recommendation to work with this artist. We would be working with that artist on these topics, on these issues, and we can bring back updates to the committee. Those kind of are the two choices at this point.
But I'd like to suggest a variation on your first choice, Tara, if I may, and that is to table the motion pending the receipt of additional requested information. Because if I understood what you just said, you were suggesting we would vote on it and then it possibly wouldn't pass, which doesn't sound to me really what our intention is. I think I agree with this thought that we should really know what the artist's intent was and what we're looking at, and then have an idea of how it would be represented to the public should we approve the project and it moves forward. But I think I'm hesitant to vote on it today, not knowing what the answer to those questions are. So I'd rather convene for a brief special meeting in 2 weeks and just know what the information is before voting. So I'd like to table the motion, or I would withdraw the motion, and then we can revisit, and then we can just move again at a special meeting.
I think, given my unfamiliarity with how what actions we're able to take as a committee to follow the rules we need to follow here, I think withdrawing your motion is probably the better option. I don't actually know what steps there are to table it. Maybe Eileen can chime in, since she has experience supporting other city boards and commissions and committees in terms of how that process works.
So tabling it is an option, and then we would continue the item on to the special meeting with the date of that meeting to be determined, if that's the route you want to take. Or we could withdraw it or do the other options as well.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Also had a quick question about appropriateness, and then also if this is the preference, but if I can get MJ and Joshua on to this call, would that be helpful, or would we rather wait?
No, I would prefer to have us talk with them first and be prepared in order to what to present. I don't feel like that would be fair to put them on the spot like that.
Thank you.
So to clarify, Tara, though, these steps that are being talked about in terms of the discussion with the artist, that would happen regardless of our vote today.
Yes.
The items that the selection panel brought up in terms of the color palette, but then this committee's discussion today would also add on
Yes.
further need to articulate the direction behind the subject of the piece.
Yes, that's what I'm hearing from the committee as a direction to staff to pursue that and to get that clarified. If you want to make a formal motion that does that, you can, but yes, we would be doing those things.
I have a question about the process for continuing the vote to another meeting. Maybe Eileen can clarify this. Does that require a motion or a simple consensus of the committee?
There would need to be a vote saying that if you were to go the route that you would say that the motion would be to table the item and continue it to a special meeting with a date to be determined. And then someone would need to second that, and then the committee would need to vote on that.
And as the creator of the original motion, am I able to move to table this motion, or does it have to be?
Yes,
Can I?
you are.
Okay, so moved.
I second it.
Okay.
All right, we'll take a vote. Unless there is any other conversation at this point, we do need to take a vote on the original motion before.
No,
No,
no, we're tabling it.
Okay,
It'll be
So-
continued until yeah, so essentially Eileen's suggestion is, I'll just say it. I move to table the motion regarding the Fifth Street parking garage selection pending information from the artists and to be considered at a future special meeting, time to be determined. Or something like that.
That does cover it. Thank you.
Thanks,
And then-
Eileen.
Melanie,
and Melanie seconded already. So if there's no more discussion, then yes, you can call the vote, Kristen.
in terms of discussion that I would like to keep having is how this could potentially impact the calendar or the schedule that we have. Does it seem likely that a special meeting can be held later this month?
It does, pending everyone's availability. So as you know, it can be hard getting a group of people together on the same date and time. But I'm looking at my calendar and we could look at, let's see, October 18th is a possible time. We'd have enough time to prepare for that, I feel, and bring back all of the information that's being requested. And so that would really be the only determining factor at that point, is the availability of the committee members to attend.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that question before we move forward with a vote.
I'm available.
That also tentatively works for me at this time, so.
Me too.
I will
All
make
right.
myself available.
Yeah, I'm traveling, but I think I can get on. So, yes.
Okay, then at this time, I'll move forward with a vote. The motion, does anyone need a repeat of that, or are we clear on what the motion on the table is?
Mhm.
To table today's conversation pending further information from the artist team as coordinated by Tara and David. All right, at this time, please vote. If you are in favor of passing this motion, raise your hand. All right, the motion passes. We will be tabling this item for a future meeting to be coordinated. Please respond when we get those email notifications.
Great, thank you, everybody. And you know, it's always fun to stumble through a few processes that we haven't done before. So thanks for your patience. And thank you, Eileen.
All right, great. Next, we're moving on to scheduled item 5.2. Today we'll be hearing an update for public art and private developments. Staff will provide an update on the public art projects installed by commercial development and in lieu fees received since March of 2019. So I will hand it over to Tara for a presentation about public art and private developments.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen, for getting the presentation up. So I am presenting today an update on the projects that have occurred over the last 2-ish year period for public art and private development. So the last time, next slide, please. The last time I presented to the committee was in March of 2019. So it has been a while. Obviously, we had a pandemic in the middle there that kind of rearranged our schedules and priorities for a while. But I wanted to take this opportunity to finally come back to the committee with an update on the projects that have happened since then, and just give a little bit of a history and recap of the ordinance that we have here in Santa Rosa. So the ordinance itself was adopted in 2006 and took a full effect in 2007. The ordinance encourages the placement of public art on site of a private development with the understanding that public art helps to enliven the city and make public areas more welcoming. The requirement applies to private commercial development with construction budgets of $500,000 and greater, and it excludes residential projects and industrial projects. The 1% requirement can be fulfilled by placing artwork on site of the development project, or in some cases on an alternate site owned by the developer, or by contributing in lieu to the city's public art fund. Next slide, please. This is a summary of the years since the ordinance was in full effect, showing each year, and these are fiscal years, so July 1st through June 30th each year, showing the amount of in lieu contributions that came in that year and the value of the art that was placed on site by developments that opted to install art. So you can see the kind of, I don't know, I think chaos or randomness of, you know, what happens in a given year. It's very determined by kind of what's going on economically, what the market is like in terms of building costs and demand for the types of commercial projects that this applies to. A lot of people ask me what, you know, in general, is it more, are there more projects that pay in lieu or more projects install on site? It obviously goes back and forth, and I'm not sure that there's really a clear pattern, but we've got all the data, we've got all the numbers, and this is just an overview of that. So as you can see, back in our latest full year, before I presented, or when I presented to you last time, I should say, it was quite heavy on the art on site with over $500,000 value of art installed on site. Okay, next slide, please. So this slide shows the developments that have happened since I last presented, or right about then. So July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. And it shows which developments that happened during this time frame opted to do the in lieu versus place artwork on their sites. And in this case, more projects opted to do the in lieu. So yeah, it's kind of, you never really know how it's going to work out. Next slide, please. This shows the last, our latest year that we just completed. So July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. And again, heavier on the, well, I should say, conversely, heavier now on the art on site versus in lieu. So it kind of ebbs and flows. The projects here that you'll see listed on these two slides, I will be showing you some examples of those being installed on site in just a minute, but I wanted to just show you kind of a list of the breakdown in terms of in lieu versus art on site first. Okay, next slide. So here are some of the projects that opted to install on site. This is the Schultz Museum Education Building. They actually built the education wing just west of their main museum building, but due to security concerns of placing the artwork closer to Westfield Lane or in an unprotected area, they sought approval and got approval to place the artwork actually on their original museum building. And so you'll see this, it's up on a balcony right along Westfield Lane that you can see driving. This picture was taken from Westfield Lane looking up at the balcony. And it's a bronze of Two Peanuts characters reading books. It's called Book Buddies. And there's a plaque, obviously can't read it, but it's that little black rectangle on the side of the wall that describes the artwork. Next slide. This was completed in 2020. The car wash itself just opened, I believe, sometime earlier this year, but the artwork was installed in 2020. It's by Patrick Amio, and it's at the Easy Breezy Car Wash on Mendocino Avenue, right across from San Rosa High School. And the artwork itself is Patrick's kind of traditional junk art style, but they're all bugs, insects, and leaves and flowers that are kind of crawling down this vine that goes from the barn structure itself to, to kind of closer to the sidewalk. Next slide. This is a very, very large mural. What's like 5 stories tall. It is by Martha Wade, a local muralist, and it's on the Memorial Hospital parking garage structure, which was built last year. And it was installed in panels. The artist actually painted it on a material in her studio, and then it was installed in sections onto the parking garage structure, California poppies and lupins, I believe. Okay, next slide. This is the AC Marriott Hotel. We've had a couple of new hotels open in Santa Rosa recently. Hotel art is always a little bit tricky because the artwork has to be unique and permanently affixed to the property in order to qualify for meeting the ordinance. And so the artwork that met the requirements for this project were things that were done uniquely by an artist and that were more permanently installed than just an art, like a framed picture hanging on a wall. So while they have lots of art in the hotel, some of it didn't meet the criteria. So like the screen that's attached architecturally, the sculpture that's hanging up in the front window, there are things like that that met the requirement. Also, all the pieces have to be publicly accessible. They can be indoors like they are in this case, but they have to be in open to the public spaces. They can't be in private meeting rooms or private guest rooms to meet the requirements of this. So these were all various artists that they worked with. They had an art consultant work with them to select all of them, and the hotel opened last year. Okay, next slide, please. This is a steel piece in front of Spark, which is a cannabis dispensary on North Dutton, or Dutton, right at College. The artist's name is Sean O'Hara, and it's made out of steel. It's actually the cellular structure of THC cannabis. And so it's an abstract version of that. I thought that was kind of interesting. So there's a plaque there that talks about what it is and who the artist is. And it's installed right near their parking lot as you drive up on Dutton Avenue. Okay, next slide. This is the Flamingo Hotel. While they didn't, it's not a new hotel, they did extensive renovations over the last year and reopened in 2021 earlier this spring, and worked with various artists to do a variety of permanent installations for the hotel. There's a mural in the lobby. They worked with an artist who made very interesting chandelier-like structures that are in several rooms. They worked with an artist who did this outdoor sculpture near their pool area. Again, these all have to be accessible by the public. They can't be in private areas. So all of these met the criteria. There's a few more images or a few more pieces that they counted towards this requirement that I don't have great pictures of, but this gives you an idea. And if you go, hang out in the lobby or go visit the Flamingo, you'll see more of them in person. Okay, next slide. And this is the last one I have to share today. This is Sonoma Clean Power. They renovated a building on E Street and hired Sayori Edie and Jonathan Russell to do this really wonderful sculptural piece that has, of course, solar lighting for the evening hours. So it lights up and is out in front of their building. You can see it from E Street as you're driving by their building. So those are the projects that have been installed recently, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Tara. So reminder for this committee, our charge today is it's for information and discussion for these project updates that we received this afternoon. Does anyone have any questions for staff? about our public art policy or how these pieces came to be as they are today. Jeff Nathanson.
Yeah, thanks. Pardon my ignorance, but I am just really interested in knowing about the process through which, let's say, a hotel that has multiple pieces by various artists, or some other project where it may not be put out to an RFP, but that there might be another process through which the art is selected, and then how is what I guess what role staff has in approval and determination of whether it meets the criteria or not. I just don't know exactly what the process is, and I'm curious to know.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So the process, by design, the way that ordinance was written, it is a staff decision to approve the proposals for artwork on site as long as they meet the criteria that's listed in the ordinance. So the way that it was written on purpose avoids or excludes any presentations being needed to the Art and Public Places Committee. Art and Public Places Committee does not have a role in approving these projects. So what that means is we have an application system where the developer has to decide early on, usually and hopefully before they submit their building permit application to the city, whether or not they're going to pay the fee or place artwork on site. So they need to make that determination early on in their process. Usually it's right after they're kind of done with planning and are starting the process for their building permit. That then allows us to either simply add the appropriate fee to their building permit once it comes in, so that it's essentially charged to them and they pay it with all their other fees that are due for their building permit. Or if they fill out the form indicating they're going to be placing artwork on site, we know that then they have the full application to be completed and sent in to us, which includes a full proposal showing where on the project site the artworks will be going, who the artists are. They have to submit artist resumes, artist statements. They have to show the artwork designs that are proposed for each piece. And they have to show that the total budget includes eligible expenditures and not ineligible expenditures towards art, as well as that it equals the correct amount for their 1% requirement. So all of that is submitted to me, and I check all of that. Sometimes I bring in other staff to review if there's questions about how it meets the ordinance, or if there's questions related to where they're proposing it go within their project, and if it's a safe location for art. And then essentially it's approved or not approved. If it's not approved, we work with them on fixing what that issue is and having them resubmit, and hopefully getting to a point where they can move forward. Very rarely, I would say, do they say, oh, well, then we can't do it and we're just going to pay the fee. But that is an option for them at that point if they can't meet the needs of the ordinance or the requirements. So that's kind of sums up how it works.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just would want to comment, and I have a question too, because I saw like when you had the summary of the 2007 and 2019 summary, that you have the in lieu and art on site, and especially from the 2018, 2019, there was a lot where, they did art on site instead of just allowing and just giving the funds up. And so for me, is that meaning that they're realizing the positive impact that art can make on, the site, their building, their company, or whatever it may be? And if that's the case, and if people are realizing that, that it directly affects us and what funds that we receive. And, it's great. And I love that if they're realizing how much art makes, how much of an impact art can make. But also if that continues, that means we are going to have less and less funds to distribute on other projects and stuff that we'd like to do for the city.
Yes, there's a fine balance there, but obviously it's at the discretion of the developer which way they want to go with their project. We really can't control that. Some cities have written kind of an incentive into their ordinance, which gives them a discount, like of 0.5% if they pay the in lieu fee rather than place artwork. But I mean, the way that ours is written and the way that it was written back when it was developed in prior to 2006. Really was to put it in the hands of the developer to make the decision on how they want to spend their money. And so I would say that, yes, some developments very clearly see the benefit of using the artwork on site as a way to bring attention to their business, to give work to local artists. There's a variety of reasons why I think some folks choose to do that and see those positive benefits. But I mean, to be honest, I also think that a lot of folks want the control over how their funds are spent. If they have to spend the money, that they want to do it the way that they want. Otherwise, if they're paying the in lieu fee, they know that the money is going into the public art fund, and then we are using it for public art projects and other expenses related to running the program, which doesn't bother people. Some people, other people really want to control, how their funds are being spent. So I think that there's not a clear pattern. I don't necessarily think that like the next few years, we're only going to get artwork on site projects. I actually know looking forward to projects that are happening right now, there's 2 more large hotels that have opted to pay the in lieu fee. That'll bring in quite a bit of in lieu fees for the fund. And, I don't know, every year you just kind of look and you see what's happening and you can kind of gauge, well, it's probably going to be a slower year for our in lieu fees this year, but then it usually balances out because there was a year prior or the next year is kind of the reverse of that. So yeah, it's I don't see any trend necessarily that's like worrisome in terms of the financial health of the public art program as a whole. I think it's just interesting to see how different projects value what their values are and what decisions they make related to fulfilling this requirement.
Got it. Thank you.
And then Tara, for our committee's information, so steps wise, during the original building permit, that is when a developer is asked to make the decision about providing on-site or paying into in lieu. And then there is a second permit application to finalize that piecework. There's
No, I wouldn't quite categorize it like that. I would say that the timeline for when we have to have decisions made, or the decision points, the timing of the decision points related to this requirement, is before their building permit can be issued, they have to tell us which way they're going with this. They have to fill out that preliminary thing. I'm sorry. Before they apply for their building permit, they need to decide on which way they're going with it, because they cannot get their building permit issued and start construction until they've either paid the fee or they have their proposed art on-site proposal approved. So there's steps along the line that it really will hold up a development's project if they don't decide, or if they don't make steps to complete the requirement. It is when that they want their occupancy, when they're done with construction, they want to move in and open their business. That is when the installation of the artwork has to be completed. However, we have a deferral agreement available so that if they need more time to install the artwork, we can do a deferral of when that has to be done.
Thank you for clarifying. Melanie, you're on mute.
Industrial always, what's the word I'm trying to think?
Exempt.
Yes, thank you. That
Yes.
word.
Yes,
That's
it's always-
interesting. That's interesting because a lot of industrial parks or facilities do some kind of artwork too. But
yeah, I'm not sure what the thought was on exempting that by the folks who wrote and passed the ordinance. I I wasn't here when that happened. I don't know exactly why. I can understand residential,
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm not exactly sure about industrial.
Yeah.
And then for tenant improvement projects, that is often, or the threshold for that is considered based on the valuation of the project.
For
it-
all projects, yeah. Mhm. So it can be a complete new construction, or it can be a remodel, tenant improvements.
Mhm.
All of those are treated the same. So the requirement applies to them all the same way, and that it would only apply if they're commercial and they have valuations of $500 and up, $500,000 and up. Wouldn't that be nice? $500? Just kidding.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have another question, and that is, if you have a project that they have a notion that they want to do something on site and actually utilize art, but they have no clue as to how to go about doing that, how do you advise them? Are there art consultants who are?
Yes, I usually encourage them to hire an art consultant, and I send them to Creative Sonoma's website. There's kind of a few places where you can list who you are and what services you offer. I try to send them to local people who could help them with that. We can't make any recommendations for who they work with, artists or art consultants, but we can send them to places where there are resources for them.
That's good. I kind of assumed that you couldn't actually tell them who to work with, but was just curious how that worked. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Great, thank you guys. Great presentation on project updates and further clarification of our policy and how it's implemented and how the city works with developers to achieve these goals and what our products get to look like. So great information. At this point, I'd like to move on to item 6.1, our committee.
Chris, sorry to interrupt. Just make sure, I don't think there are any, but just call for any public comments on this item before we move on. Thanks.
Right. Eileen, at this point, do we have any public comments on the project updates item?
We do not have any public comment at this time.
Okay, then I will move forward on to item 6.1, committee reports. This is the opportunity on our agenda for our ad hoc task force reports and discussion. Do any of the APPC members have report outs ready for the ad hoc task forces? We have the Division Equity, Inclusion and Access Group, Community Engagement, and Project Development. Lisa, please.
Yes, I spoke with 3 different groups.
Sorry,
First one
remind
was-
us which task force you are representing.
I am the outreach.
Community engagement.
Yes,
Great, thank you.
yes. And so
No.
No?
No, you
Wait a
and Ann are on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
yes, which is, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, Melanie and I are community engagement.
Outreach,
They're kind
okay.
of interconnected. Maybe we should.
Yeah,
meet
that's what I was just,
them.
because I'm always like, I'm doing a community outreach here because I'm reaching out to, these certain groups and stuff. But yeah, it is kind of so, but that's where my head is at, to reach out to these individuals and tell them what we're doing. So I did meet with Kirsten Matson that Ann and I did from Creative Sonoma, and we just told her exactly what we're doing, how we're trying to change the APPC. We have this strategic plan, this 4-year strategic plan, and what we're trying to create a set of specific, criteria related to diversity and inclusion, and how we as a group can reach out to the underserved, reach out to the underserved communities and organizations out there and support people in Santa Rosa. And she gave us a really good advice on how we go about doing it. I mean, we really just need to get our name out there and really show people and allow people that our door is open. We want to help, we want to support. Before, they never felt that they could approach the Art and Public Places Committee. That wasn't, they didn't think, nobody thought that was an option. And so when I did, speak with Kristen, she was excited, and we're excited about it. And then from there, I went and talked to Isabel Lopez, and she is from Raíces Collective. And we had a wonderful conversation with her, and she was also really excited to hear that how we are completely going about and doing what we do differently. And she now knows our door is open, and she and if she has questions, she can come to us, and then we can, whatever questions we have, we can go to Tara. But we're here, and we want to support, and we want to see what we can do to be that support. It was really eye-opening, and she was just glad to know that, that she can actually reach out to the city, and there is, these possibilities of us working together. I also spoke to Lucien and told them, kind of gave them the down low of what we're doing, and then also made them know we need representation for District 1, and there's nobody there, and we need someone to put their application in to go online. And so I think the last 3 email blasts that they have put out there have included, the board opening for the Art and Public Places Committee for District 1, and they're reaching out to people and letting them know that that position is opening, and they need to contact that representative, put in their application and contact their representative to be able to be placed in that position or be considered for that position. So yeah, that's it. Anybody have any questions for me?
Sounds like you had some really fruitful conversations for some conversations that again open up the door to future coordination, and I think that's really meaningful. Well, thank you for reaching out again about the District 1 representation on this board. I know that that is an ongoing thing that our committee is working towards. So, to be more representative of all of the spaces in town. Does anyone else?
District 1?
That's Roseland.
Ah.
Yeah, and we don't have anybody. I mean, that we need to have someone to represent that area. We're desperately in need.
Yeah, it's Roseland and South Park, and Eddie Alvarez is the council member for District 1 and has not yet appointed someone to our public places. So that's kind of what we're waiting
And
for.
I did reach out to him too, but I haven't heard back.
I actually reached out to him as well and didn't hear back. And Ernesto Olivares, who is on our board, reached out to him and copied me, and still haven't heard back. So I'm not sure what. I know Council Member Alvarez has been in the news a lot. He's been busy, but we should probably. I don't know, Lisa, maybe we really should coordinate our efforts through our 2 task forces, because we definitely have many of the same people we are talking to, or who we care to speak with.
Okay, yes, that would be great. We should.
Just to add to that, I have I have answered a few people's inquiries about how we get someone appointed when a council member hasn't done it yet. And just so everyone knows, in order to be considered through kind of the internal process that we have, an application must be on file in our system. So if you know anyone who's in District 1 who really would like to be serving and can do so, then I would encourage you to encourage them to go ahead and submit an application so it's in the system, because what we do periodically is the clerk's office, working with the staff liaisons for the committees, will send that council member a list of those people who are in our system. So
Yeah, and I made that clear to Lucian too. I told them, make sure they just put the application on there. You can go online. It's up on the Art and Public Places Committee, just to click on there. And once it's on there, then give us the heads up, and then we can go ahead and go from there.
And just to clarify, while collaborative work on these topics, the task forces is definitely encouraged. We do have to be careful, because if 4 members of this committee get together, it would be a violation of the Brown Act. So while we can all chat now in a public meeting during these status updates, if there's a desire to have a joint task force meeting, we would have to publicly notice it and have it be open to the public. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. Not to put a damper on anything, so anyone else, go ahead.
We don't have an update. That's
Actually, there's a
oh.
brief update, Melanie.
Okay.
We are scheduled to meet tomorrow.
in 2 weeks.
Oh, in a week. Is that a week from tomorrow? I didn't look at it closely. Anyway.
Yeah, I think it's the 12th, right? So
Yes.
it's a
Oh,
week
the
from
12th.
tomorrow.
That's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, got it. But anyway, yeah, we are, we're planning to meet. We just couldn't get it together to meet for this meeting.
Great, thank you. I'll give a quick report out for the Project Development Task Force. Nathan and I had met with Tara, not last week, but the week before, and we talked about some more of the goals of how we want our task force to interact with city staff or city staff's consultants for preparing the general plan update. And we got a status update on where we are with the general plan update. They previously were at the phase where, or when we had been reached out to as a committee, that was part of the visioning phase for the document. And now that step has been, they wrapped up the visioning phase and are working on the project alternatives. It is timely for an artist's opportunity to be planned into the general plan update. And so our working currently is to recommend a budget amount for what this project or for what this could entail, and coming up with ideas for how an artist could be involved with the general plan update, whether it's engagement, which can take many forms, as part of lectures, workshops, hands-on art experiences, community events, but a budget price tag would need to be allocated from our team in order to sponsor those types of events. So that's where we're at as our project development team, to take the ideas and then put boots on the ground actually to make that work happen. Nathan, was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, just because there's a lecture that's sort of on deck still, and I was wondering if the protocols around city-sponsored lecture or just city-sponsored events had shifted since the sort of last COVID regulations were in effect. I don't know if that's been updated or not.
Yes, the city can now host community or open to the public, I should say, events, but the restrictions are quite considerable. So I can send you the list of the things that we would have to do in order to host our own event. In the community, outdoors is still kind of the preferred method or venue, I should say. But I can definitely provide that information so that you can take a look at it and see what might be feasible to start thinking about in relation to what your task force is working on.
Cool. Yeah, well, we've made some arrangements with people who are willing to do pro bono events just to get the ball rolling, and I think that would be good. So I'm thinking we can formalize that proposal in time for our next meeting, and sort of set some concrete dates and try it out.
Great.
Great. So those were our updates today for our ad hoc task forces under the Art and Public Places Committee. Our next scheduled item is 7.1, future agenda items. We have a running list here, but I did want to just provide the context of if we do feel strongly about discussing any of these items in depth, that we will need to schedule them on a future meeting agenda. And so this committee would need to make a motion in order to put this item on a future agenda. So just to keep in the back of your mind while we're going over our ongoing list of items.
And Kristen, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just realized, and sorry I didn't catch it earlier, that we skipped over 5.3 project updates.
Oh.
So if you want to do that after you do item 7 before we adjourn, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we got a chance to give you a few updates on other projects.
Thank you. Quickly, I'll keep going with item 7.1. Our ongoing list includes private partnerships with commercial real estate and local artists, commercial real estate developers or managers and local artists. Another topic was how can the Art and Public Places Committee support community programs or events? We were looking to, again, have communication with Creative Sonoma about the art strategy update. And then our task force was also youth representation on the Art and Public Places Committee. And our last item is the Fire Commemoration Memorial Project. If there, Melanie, hi. Hope you're on mute, Melanie.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we schedule the youth representation on Art and Public Places Committee for future discussion. I know Tara's done some research on it and it's going to be a bugaboo, but we need to talk about it.
I'll second that.
All right, great. We'll take a vote. Please raise your hand if you are interested in hearing about youth representation on the Art and Public Places Committee at a future agenda. Great. Thank you, everyone. The motion passes unanimously. So we will hear about youth representation on APPC at a future meeting. Great. And then at this time, I will go back to item 5.3, project updates. Unless there was a question or a clarification.
Yeah, I just had a question. So on that one, on what we're talking about in 7, the ongoing list, and it's for future agenda. So were we only selecting one, and the one that Melanie suggested, or all of these in consideration, and we will be discussing all of them, or no?
The idea with that list is to keep a record of the ideas that are generated during this item on each discussion.
Correct.
And as we do address them, they would then disappear from the list. So,
Okay,
so
But
the,
they're-
i- yeah, so the idea is in order to actually have a discussion about any of those, they have to be on the agenda as a
Okay.
discussion item. And so that was the motion that Melanie made, was to make sure that at a next or upcoming meeting, we actually have that item on the discussion, on the agenda for discussion.
okay. And so this will be coming on, all those, the list will be, they will not be removed. They will be something for an option for us to vote on and pick again.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And if there's any additions each meeting, that's also possible too. Like I think last time at the last meeting, we added that fire commemoration item. So there's always room to add more ideas or topics that may be considered for discussion in the future.
Okay, great.
Jeff.
Yeah, and just, I'm thinking about that fire commemoration memorial topic because I think we're going to have to address that sometime in the not too distant future. I know I've been approached, I'm not sure if Tara or others have, but about getting some kind of project going. And I know that there's a number of people who have been talking about various projects at various sites, probably most significantly at the site of where the round barn burned down. But I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to ask that it be put on the agenda or not, but I guess the protocol is I would have to move to make that an agenda item in the future. And if
Yes,
that's the case, okay, then I move to put the fire commemoration memorial project discussion on future agenda. And I think it's trying to second.
I'm trying to second, sorry.
Thanks.
Second.
Do we
Okay,
get
so
to vote on
do we
that?
need a vote on that?
Oh,
All right, we'll take a vote. Please raise your hand if you would like to have the fire commemoration memorial project featured on an upcoming agenda. Great, thank you, everyone. And so continuing on with this list of topics, I know that we, Tara, offline had spoken about your communication with Creative Sonoma. If we want to receive an update about that, is that something that we need to request and make a motion on?
You know, I think that that's one that, I mean, to be honest, I'm working on getting that scheduled with Kristen. So I think that that's going to happen regardless. It's more a matter of getting her on a future agenda just to present to the committee. So that one will happen at some point. If you don't, even if you don't make a motion.
Got it.
Okay, good to know. And okay, we'll circle around to this list, and we always have the opportunity to reach out to you in between meetings and know that we will have a special meeting later on this month. Or hopefully we'll have a special meeting later on this month. At that time, can we agendize future items as well as it becomes more relevant, or when there is something to
No,
talk about?
the special meeting needs to be explicit for the purpose of addressing the issue that we're calling the meeting for. So in this case, I think we would only have the tabled motion coming back regarding the Fifth Street Parking Garage project. It would probably be a very streamlined agenda with no other items on it.
Okay. Does this committee have any other items that they would like to bring up for a future agenda item or to put on to our ongoing list? Nathan, hi. Hope you're on mute.
At some later date, I think it would be good to talk about establishing a budget for visiting artist events, talks, workshops, etc. So I would like to submit that as a proposal.
So just food for thought on that one. We usually incorporate the budget around the themes of what we're implementing for that next year. So for instance, if it's about, I don't know, the public art audit that's on our work plan for this year, for instance, and there was a need to do a public workshop as part of that, it's would have already been included in that budget. So I guess my question to you would be, are you interested in the idea of starting a public events and lecture series that the Art and Public Places Committee focuses on or hosts? That would be a separate program rather than something related. So maybe that would be more of the item that then would be up for discussion.
Gotcha. Is that clear to everyone as a?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we can add that to the list. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
Great. All right, at this time, we'll move back to item 5.3. Thank you, Tara, for letting us know that we had skipped over that. Project updates. We're looking for staff to present updates on current projects that are in the pipeline.
I'll have David start us off with a brief update about Imagine Art in Courthouse Square.
Thanks, Tara. Yeah, so the current item that we're on with the Courthouse Square project is that we've closed the community engagement survey that we were using to collect phrases and words from community members. And so that has closed, and we are organizing the data with the artist Blessing Hancock and her public engagement coordinator, Angela. And so we're working together to present the words that we've collected through this process to our community advisory group, and they will help us find which words that we will be using to translate into other languages to include onto the sculpture. So that's kind of where we're at right now, working with the two of them to help us organize the data a little bit more. And then on the other side of things too, we are working with the California Indian Museum and Cultural Center to create, we've created draft language for the land acknowledgement that will also accompany the artwork on Courthouse Square. So we're waiting to hear back on their comments and feedback. So I think those are the two main items that we're kind of at, unless Tara would like to add anything for Courthouse Square, but that's all I have for you today.
Great, thanks, David. I don't have anything to add on Courthouse Square other than we are hoping to bring the final recommended list of words and phrases and languages to the Art and Public Places Committee by the next meeting on November 1st. That's our tentative timeline. I can give a few other brief updates though. Thank you, David. Just in terms of maintenance and conservation, I don't have much to report on the Asawa Fountain since last time. We are still confirming the available funding that could go towards that project. So I don't have anything confirmed or anything really to report there. The Foundry is still working on the tests that they were doing to create molds a couple different ways. One from the traditional mold making process, the other from doing 3D scanning to make a mold, and the sample casts to compare how those two look side by side. And then the engineering is still continuing for how we're mounting the panels onto the fountain. So that's really all that's been going on with that. So it's still working, still moving forward, but no final confirmation yet on the funding opportunities we think we might have for funding some of that. In terms of other maintenance, we are looking at our list of works in our collection and prioritizing which ones need maintenance in this next round as we're working with our conservators. There are a couple pieces along the Prince Memorial Greenway that sustained heavy damage from homeless encampments that were down there in the recent past. And so we're working on scheduling the work for those. There's also an opportunity, probably not within the next year, probably a little further out, to kind of reimagine one of the pieces that is along the Prince Memorial Greenway where the Joe Rodota Trail connects with it. It's a circular sound wall kind of area. The piece is a mosaic piece called Soundscape. And it's actually on SMART-owned property, right where they're going to be putting a pedestrian access path that goes to 3rd Street and connecting to the new development. That will be over in that Railroad Square area. So there may be an opportunity to work with ArtStart to reconfigure it so the whole piece isn't destroyed, but there will be kind of like a pathway cut through it. And then there's an opportunity to potentially add some design features along the reconfigured walkway. So those are the types of maintenance and conservation projects that we've been working on. And then just very briefly, we have, while these aren't traditional public art projects, they're projects that are related to the program that we are working on. One is the kind of reimagining of the Out There Santa Rosa program, now that it's kind of been consolidated under my management along with the public art program. Raisa and I have been working with a new creative thought partner on how to reimagine the website for Out There Santa Rosa, our brand, how it can include public art, and how that it can really serve as a public-facing website for the public art program, separate from the city's site, which can still have our kind of business needs on the back end. So that is an exciting project. We're looking to launch a new website and kind of new branding, new social media presence for both Out There San Jose and the public art program merged together early next year. So hopefully I'll have more to report on that at another meeting, but that's just a brief update. Similarly, we are also working on Raisa. Rafael Rivero, who's our economic development specialist, and myself are working with the same Third Plateau consultants who helped us do the public art strategic plan on an economic development division strategic plan. And so we are getting somewhere exciting finally with that project. And we have some draft mission and vision statements that we're hoping to continue to fine tune and get kind of buy-in from our stakeholder groups. And we'll be presenting how that kind of overlaps with the public art program strategy at a future meeting, but I wanted to let you know that that is in the works. And then lastly, quickly, this is probably something that is not very known to this committee, but the Community Promotions Fund is a city council line item in the budget, under the city council's budget, that funds nonprofit community events that are open to the public in Santa Rosa. So some of the events that have traditionally received this funding are things like the Wednesday night market and the Rose Parade, Pride, the Pride Parade and Festival that when it moved to downtown Santa Rosa, the Human Race, and a handful of others. But essentially, we are now, after coming out of COVID, having the funds be suspended and the whole program be suspended for 2 years, going on 2 years now, we're taking this opportunity to reimagine how that funding program works and have it be consolidated under kind of my area of what I do, because it relates to the event permits that I also am responsible for. And we also have the opportunity to really look at leveraging the funds that are set aside each year for that program, and then adding potentially tourism funds and public art funds so that we can expand what kinds of events can be supported through that program. So it's really actually an exciting opportunity to reimagine that. And when we know more about what that looks like and what that revised program and policy will look like, I'll bring back a full report on that as well. But those are some of the other things that are in the works, and I wanted to let you all know what's been going on. So thank you. I can answer any questions.
part that was called community, what again, that program? That fund?
Community Promotions Fund.
Community Promotions Fund. Thank you.
Anne, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand go up a minute ago. Oh, you're on mute though.
No question. It's just touching my hair.
Okay.
I was actually just thinking, pretty soon you're just going to be running the city, Tara.
Yep, that's, didn't you know I applied for the city manager position? No, just kidding. Absolutely not. No, it's really satisfying though to be able to combine programs, see connections, be able to look at where things align and have the support of Raisa and others in our department and in the city to really see kind of the hidden web of connections that we can really make here in the city and not be constrained to, oh no, you're in the public art program, you just do your thing, versus let's think a little bit more expansively about how we can connect, work together, make programs work better, funding for more people, more programs, helping the community. Anyway, there's a lot of things that are exciting when we can be a little bit more expansive like that. So
Great.
For our information, does the community promotions fund, does use of those dollars need to be approved by the city council?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there, yeah, it's completely up in the air right now exactly how we would change the kind of functionality of how the funds are set aside and approved. So when we are, as we're starting to reconfigure that policy and the procedures related to it, that'll be a little bit more clear. But currently, the funds are set aside in the city council's budget, a certain amount each year. Then there's a process where events apply for those funds. There's a review process, and then those the review panel essentially recommends the funding allocations for those events to the city council, and it's approved through the budget process. So it goes through that whole, the city's whole budget review and budget hearings in June each year.
So is the consolidation of these programs and making connections to provide more flexibility for events and opportunities, was that something that came out of the economic development strategic planning process, or was that?
No, that was me essentially and Raisa brainstorming about how we could fix something that doesn't work very well and make it better. So, I mean, the idea really is that selfishly, the Community Promotions Fund has always been problematic because of how it makes a separate kind of class of events than other events through the permitting process. So it essentially makes a separate group of events, these city-sponsored events. They get in-kind services, but then it ends up costing the city. The city ends up gifting many more dollars than we were actually giving because the cost of actual services doesn't equal what the grant or the funding was for. So it's always been a problematic issue. And so, not to go too deep into the weeds, this idea of reconfiguring it started with how can we address that issue? And then it was like, well, there's still a need. The Art and Public Places Committee, the Public Art Program, the Tourism Fund, and the Out There Santa Rosa Program has always wanted more flexibility in what kinds of projects and things in the community we are able to support. And so why not have this also be an opportunity to expand it in that way as well? So I think it was a combination of those kinds of thoughts that got us there.
Very neat. Well, it's awesome to hear that is something that we will hear more information about, but that's in the works. So thanks for the update.
Sure.
All right. At this time, it looks like our meeting, we've gone through all of our agenda items, unless I've missed anything else. Unless there's anything else that someone would like to bring up or advertise to this group, we will be meeting again on our next regularly scheduled meeting on November 1st. Does anyone have anything else to pipe in? If not, I will adjourn this meeting.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good to see everybody.